4 years ago this week, I left my 9 to 5 job and went full time in my online business. And often people ask, when do I know that it's okay to leave my job? What are some things that I need to consider if I have an online business? When is it time? When is it okay? What risks am I taking? We're going to talk about that in this video. And I'm actually going to be looking at this article on CNBC, 35-year-old making $11,400 a week in passive income. The 3 questions I asked myself before quitting my day job. If you are considering leaving your job for pursuing your online business full-time, this video will help you because you want to make this decision well. You don't want to be hasty about it, but you also don't want to put it off longer than you need to. So it's a little bit of a delicate balance, and we're going to dive into that today. If you're new here, my name is Lane. I love to help people replace their 9 to 5 income with a thriving online business without hustle, grind, or having to build a large social media following. I talk about that on this channel. So if you're into that kind of thing, be sure to subscribe and go to lanesebring.com/super simple. Pick up my free super simple guide to your first $500 online. These are the exact steps that I use to build my multiple 6-figure online business to where it is today. This will get you started. If you can make that first $500, you can make that first $50,000 and that first $500,000 and so on. lanesebring.com/super simple. It's yours for free just to say thanks for stopping by. 35-year-old making $11,400 a week in passive income. 3 questions I asked myself. For 2 years, Ryan's side hustle made enough money for him to quit his full-time jobs. Hogue was a senior web developer at a nonprofit called Charity Engine and an adjunct web developer professor at George Mason University in Northern Virginia. Hey, I used to live in that area in Fairfax. He made more than $117,000 per year from those jobs, but started developing passive income businesses on the side, hoping to earn money for travel, fun, and his future family, he says. In 2018, those businesses out-earned his full-time income. That is a lot of fun when that happens. When you start to realize, oh my gosh, this business is making more than my job. He made nearly $135,600. The same thing happened the following year. Yet despite his growing success, he stayed employed partially because quitting felt outside of his comfort zone. My parents' understanding of money was kind of imposed on me, says Hogue, 35. They're savers. They couldn't fathom not having a 9 to 5 job. This is something that a lot of people deal with, where they kind of look down on the idea of not having a job, even if their side business has now dwarfed what their job is making. And in his case, it's not necessarily dwarfing it, but for 2 years in a row, compared to the $117,000 he's making at his job, he's making $135,600 in the business. And that happened 2 years in a row where he's making more. If he could dedicate full-time attention to that business, that $135,000 could double or triple pretty fast. Hogue finally left his web development role in 2020. I left my job in 2020 as well. We have a lot in common, me and this guy. Charity Engine asked him to transition into a new role, and he saw it as a sign to take the leap. He says he left his adjunct teaching role after finishing in the fall of 2021. Here's what's crazy. So I had the exact same thing happen in 2020 when COVID happened. I went back to work we're set to go back to work in June of 2020. After we had a lot of time working from home, I was able to put a lot more time into the business, did not have as much to do. And so it came time to go back. When it came time to go back, I was going to have to continue in my role that I had at the church. I was working as an executive pastor at the time. And I was going to have to take on the leadership of one of our locations and be a location pastor on top of being the executive pastor. So it was going to have to be like a double role, but for the same amount of money, obviously. There's never more money. And so that was my catalyst to leave. This was growing. What I was doing at my first online business, Preaching Donkey, was growing. And I decided in June of 2020 to go ahead and say, I could stay and that might be safer, but I would likely be miserable and forfeiting what I could be accomplishing in my online business. So I left. So sometimes those kind of transitional things where you're presented with a change can be the catalyst to making that kind of leap. In retrospect, he could have done both sooner. He has. Yes, of course. The more time you dedicate to building passive income streams, the more money you can make. Life was good, but I was directly trading my time for money, and I knew it wasn't going to get me where I wanted to be. Hogue said during CNBC Make It's South by Southwest panel in March, by the time I left my day job, I was probably a year plus overdue. Now, Hogue makes $11,400 per week in mostly passive income. According to documents reviewed by Make It, here's his advice on when to leave your full-time job in favor of a side hustle and when it's smarter to stay. So I want to point out something here. He decided to leave when he was making about $135,000 a year, which is about $11,000 a month. He left and now he's making $11,000 a week. That's pretty awesome. He's making about $45,000 a month, which is $500K or so a year. So he has now dwarfed anything he was ever making at his job. When to leave your 9 to 5? Hogue felt confident leaving his full-time jobs because he could answer yes to these 3 questions. He says this: does your side hustle have multiple streams of income? Does your side hustle make more dollars per day than your full-time job? Is your full-time job preventing you from growing your side hustle? Love it. I want to look at these 3 questions because I think there's a lot of wisdom here. Does your side hustle have multiple streams of income? You can insulate yourself a little bit from the risk of leaving a job by simply not having one source of income. If you think about it, the reason why an online business is actually not risky is because it's built on a growing set of multiple income streams. You don't just start an online business and get a salary in the same way that you start a job and get a salary. If you think about it, you start a job, they pay you a salary, and you have one customer, your employer, right? So your personal skills are being sold to one customer who happens to also be your employer. If that customer decides that they no longer want you, they can fire you, and now your one source of income is gone. And so that's why I don't like this idea that business is risky, but having a job is safe, because it's not really a safe position to be in. It's actually pretty precarious when most of your income is tied up in one company. One boss can just flip a switch and turn off your livelihood. So a side hustle is going to always be multiple streams of income, especially at first, because you don't know what's going to take off. You're going to treat it like an experiment. You're going to do a lot of different things and see what works over time. So does it have multiple streams of income? In my case, I have about 6 that are coming in every single month. Now, some of those within each category, there might be multiple ways. So you could stretch this out and that 6 could turn into 30. But by and large, in terms of categorically, there's about 6 streams that I have. And I had that when I left my job. So I would have ticked yes to that question. Does your side hustle make more dollars per day than your full-time job? It does now. It makes like a whole heck of a lot more. But when I left my job, it was not making more. It was making less. But I decided it was okay to leave because of this third question. Is your full-time job preventing you from growing your side hustle? And that was the case for me. My full-time job was it was so demanding that I wasn't able to find more hours in a week, in a day, in order to grow my business. And so the growth of my business was stunted because of my job. So even though I wasn't making as much per day as my full-time job, I knew that if I had the time to dedicate, then it could easily dwarf what I was making. And in my case, I wasn't making that much in my job. I was a pastor, and I was a pastor at a church that just didn't pay very well, and a lot of them don't. So it was actually pretty easy to make that much, and now it's been easy to make 5, 6, 7 times that amount. And so I'm fine now, and I was actually fine then. And I wasn't trying to replace as much money as what he was trying to replace. He was trying to replace $117,000. I wasn't trying to replace that much money. Obviously, he's more than replaced it. I've more than replaced it. Everything's fine. I think you should wait and hold on to your day job for as long as you can, says Hogue. You will know when it's time to leave when attending your 9 to 5 job impedes further growth of your side hustle. So I kind of agree with him there when he says, I think you should hold on to it for as long as you can. I think there's some wisdom in that. It's a really cautious approach. I think you definitely need to have your business, your online business, proving itself. It needs to be making you money. I don't think it necessarily has to make more dollars per day than your full-time job. as long as, number one, the trajectory is one of growth. It is growing, and you know that more investment in the business, more of your time in the business strategically placed will lead to growth. As long as that's there and you have savings. And I had both of those. We had enough savings where it was like, okay, if it takes a year or a year and a half for this thing to really start to make as much as it needs to make, we're going to be fine. And the trajectory is there. In other words, the growth, it's showing growth. If I could put like some more kind of focused effort into it, then it could grow even more. This means you need to have a certain amount of savings or other form of economic cushion. So this is really, really what I was getting at. Like a spouse who has benefits and enough income to float you when times are tough to survive an extended period. I missed this paragraph. It said, Kathy Christoph, whose blog Side Hustle was reviewed more than 500 different side gigs, offers another important question to ask yourself. Do you have the desire and financial ability to withstand bumps in the road? And that's what we thought through. We thought through that with our savings, and we said we have enough savings to get us through about a year and a half, and there is a path towards growth that is pretty solid. For Jamie Inlow, it was a simple analysis. Building a side hustle while working full-time was tiring, and she was more passionate about one than the other. Inlow balanced her jobs as a higher education consultant and a part-time student program coordinator in Virginia with her side hustle, a property management company called Be Still Gateways, for 2.5 years. She knew it was time to leave her other jobs and run Be Still Getaways full time when she noticed she was starting to behave differently and realized she could afford to pay herself a salary, in her case, $72,000 a year. I knew I was ready to quit my job when the demands of working full time and working for Be Still Getaways was starting to affect my mental health and my ability to be present for my family. So there you have it. There's some perspective on when it's time to leave your job. I think these questions are really, really helpful to consider. So I would ask you, does your side hustle have multiple streams of income? If it doesn't, I can help with that. LaneSebring.com/supersimple. Does your side hustle make more dollars per day than your full-time job? You can easily get there quickly if you can put the time into it that it takes. And it's not always necessarily a quantity of time, it's the quality of time. Are you bringing the best of yourself to the work, or are you so exhausted from your job that you don't have that left over to give? And is your full-time job preventing you from growing your side hustle? 3 really great questions to consider. I have another video about this topic, about when it's okay to leave your 9 to 5. You might find that interesting. It's right here. I'll see you in that video.